Welcome everybody to this webinar KNIME 101, how to build your first workflow. KNIME 101 is a new series, a mentoring webinar series thought for the KNIME beginners. Every second Wednesday of the month, a KNIME expert from the KNIME community will show an introduction to their preferred KNIME topic. Today's topic is how to build your first workflow. And today's speakers are Emilio and Michele. Emilio and Michele, they actually work at KNIME. Emilio, you might know already from all those KNIME educational videos, for example, on the KNIME TV channel on YouTube. What can we do? Emilio is just a very popular teacher. Michele is a student, but he's close to graduating. He recently learned KNIME, and now he's very enthusiastic to share his learning experience with us. But now we can start. Enough talking from me, so let's hear from Emilio and Michele.
Thank you, Rosaria. So first of all, let's look at the topics that we are going to cover today in our webinar. So first of all, we have a short introduction to KNIME Analytics Platform to see what features set this tool apart. Then we will have a live demo. As Rosaria mentioned, we are going to build our first workflow together. And in the end, we will have the Q&A section. So as Rosaria said, please post your questions in the QA tab. So let's begin. First of all, what is KNIME Analytics Platform? So KNIME Analytics Platform is a tool to make sense of your data. And with KNIME, you can work on a variety of different data tasks. For example, data transformation, data visualization, data reporting. You can train models with your data. And the two main features of KNIME is that, first of all, it is open source, meaning that you can download KNIME Analytics Platform. Emilio will walk you through that process. And the code will be on your local machine forever, and you can use it for free. The second important feature of KNIME is that it uses visual programming, allowing people that don't have a coding background to start coding right away. So I'm sure you're familiar with one or a few of these technologies. What visual programming allows you to do is take a step back and interact with all of these technologies through a visual interface. And in this visual interface, we use visual units to make sense of our data. So what are these units called in KNIME? They're called nodes. Here on the top of the slide, we see a node that performs a specific function. In this case, it's called a table splitter. And we see the data coming from the left, flowing into the node through the input port on the left. The data is then being transformed within the node, and then it is output on the right side, and it flows out through the output nodes. On the lower part of the node, we see this traffic light, which is very informative. In fact, when we just start with the node is not configured. This means that we have not told the node what to do. We can go ahead and configure it, and then the traffic light will become yellow. And once we execute it, so we told the node what it has to do, and also it finally does it, the traffic light will become green. So once we connect more nodes, we get a workflow. So I repeat, each node has a function, and a node combines more function to transform your data, and we will build one together in a couple of seconds. Before though, we would like to mention that building on the open source concept of the open source nature of KNIME, we also have a platform called KNIME Community Hub, where the community of KNIME can share their solution and access also resources. But now, Emilio, why don't you do a walkthrough of the user interface, so then we can start and finally build our first workflow.
Yes, of course, with pleasure. So let's dig into that. Let's start with, first of all, downloading KNIME Analytics Platform. You can do that from knime.com/downloads. And as Michele said, KNIME Analytics Platform is free and open source. So you just can put or not your details here and then accept terms and conditions. And then you can access the download page where you have the possibility to download the self-extracting archive, for example, or the installer for Windows, Linux, or Mac, and then you proceed with the installation as you are used to. Now, I've already done it. And when you open KNIME Analytics Platform for the first time, it looks like this. This is the home page where you get some example workflows here at the top. And at the bottom, you can see that you have some recently used workflow. So as soon as you work on different projects, and you can jump back into one of them. Let's open an example workflow to see how it looks like. So what is a workflow in practice? Let's open this one, for example, and then I can zoom in a little bit. And you can see that inside this workflow, there are a bunch of nodes, as Michele says, so a bunch of processing units, let's say. And then each node does something, provides the data in output, and this data is connected to the next node. So basically, the workflow gets executed one node to another from left to right. Things to notice about nodes is, for example, that when I hover over it, I can see this little menu here at the top and the configuration in the node status here at the bottom. Now, in this case, the node status is yellow. This means that the node is configured. So the settings of the node are already given, and the node is ready to be executed. So it's ready to carry the task it is being configured to carry out, and then produce something in output. How do I change the status of a node? Well, I can do that with this little button here, the display button here at the top that says execute. Now, if I click it, two things happen. The first thing is that the status of my node changes. Now it's green, so you can see that the node is executed. It's carry out the task it was configured to execute, and at the bottom, I can see what the node has produced. So here at the bottom, this is called node monitor. I can see exactly the data table produced by my node. In this case, this data table contains some items like couch, armchair, whatever. So two columns, one with the items and another one with the amount of them. But this could be anything. What I can also do with these buttons on the top, I can also reset one node, so bring it back to the unexecuted state, in this case to the configured, so not executed state, and then execute it again, for example. The other very, very nice thing of visual programming of KNIME is that every node, as soon as I click on them, I can see the data table that it produced. So ideally, when I have a full workflow executed, I can also, like, for example, from here, I can see how my data table changed from this state to this one, and then to this one, and so on. So I can see how my data evolve over the course of my workflow. Other things to notice in the UI is here at the top, you have basically the same button. So you can click from here or from here. I can also reset the execution of some nodes, also from the table, from the toolbar, it is called. And then the other important part of the UI that it's important to notice is this tab on the left part. Here I have the info tab already selected, where I get some information about the node that I have selected in the workflow. For example, as soon as I select the Excel reader, this changes and show me the documentation basically of my node. So I know what this node is supposed to do basically, and I can do it. I can get this information for every node of my workflow. I can change then the tab and move to the Nodes tab. In here, I can select every node that is available to me. And then from here, I can take the node and then put it to my workflow by dragging and dropping it. And Michele will do it several times, this kind of operation. Maybe one important thing to know is that KNIME comes with a lot of nodes, like I think 4,000 nodes or even more. Not all of them are available to you now if you have just downloaded the software, because some of them are part of some extensions. So you might need to install some additional extensions. Again, open source for free. We will show you how to do that later. But yeah, so don't worry if you don't find a specific node. Maybe it's part of an extension to add to your KNIME Analytics platform. Where was I? Yes, so I showed the Notes tab. Here, if you move, you can also move to the Explorer tab. In this case, what happens is that you can browse the different workflows that are on your machine. In this case, I can browse to my other workflows that I already have, and then jump from one workflow to another. And finally, there is the Kai tab, which is super nice, and it's an AI assistant that you can use to ask questions about the node, and even use it to make it build a workflow for you. So that's very nice, especially if you are super new and maybe you don't know which kind of node you can use to solve a specific task. Then Kai is a very nice tool to use to give you some ideas. Finally, the last tab is the Monitor tab, where basically if there are warnings or errors on your node, now we were lucky because everything got more or less executed without problems. But if there were problems with our workflow, we can see them listed here. So we can quickly jump to them. Now, that was more or less the tour of the user interface, but why don't we create the first workflow? And if you have downloaded KNIME, I highly recommend you to just follow along. Maybe you can do a similar thing while we build it together. To build a workflow, you have many ways. What I like to use most of the times is this plus button here at the top, where I can click, and then I get prompt to give the workflow, to give a name to my workflow. Let's call it Demo 101, and click Create. And now what I get is an empty workflow here where there are no nodes, and I can so basically I can start building my workflow from scratch. The first thing that you normally do when you build, let's say 90% of your workflows, is to read some data, because that's what you do most of the times. For that, I know that I want to read a CSV file, for example, so I can already drag and drop a CSV reader node. With the CSV reader, you can see that there are no input port, because this node is actually performing the task of taking a file and reading the data inside my workflow. So I can click the configuration window because I can't execute it. Why I can't execute it? Because it's not configured. So let's click the configuration window and see what we have to provide. Now, don't get intimidated by so many options. What we will focus today on is this first part. Basically, to get the CSV reader carry out their task, we need to tell it where to find the file that we want to read. And in this case, we have many options to refer a file. We will just use the simple one, the local file system, and we have to provide an absolute path. For that, I can click Browse, and then I think I put the files here in 101 webinar athletes.csv. That's the file that I want to read. So I click Open. As you can see, the path gets populated on its own. And then here at the bottom, I can already see a preview of the file that will be read. So I can see that there are many columns, and then basically the node understood by itself how to correctly read that CSV file. So I'm happy with the preview, and now let's click OK. And now the configuration window closes, and I can see that my node has a yellow traffic light. So I can finally click the play button and move the traffic light from yellow to green, execute the node, and see finally the data table here at the bottom. This data table is about Olympic Games, but now I will leave the stage again to Michele, that maybe you can talk a little bit about the data and build a little workflow for us.
Of course. Okay. Thank you, Emilio. So we thought, since the Olympic Games were last year, why not use Olympic data to show you how to build your first workflow? So as you can see here, we have a list of participants to the Olympics with a lot of information. And the question that we want to ask, to actually respond to today, is what is the top 10 of countries by number of medalists? So to do so, let's build our first workflow. Let's go ahead. So as I said, we are looking at the number of medalists. And as you can see here in our data sets, in the medal column, we have NA values. This means that the athlete did not win a medal. And then here we can see gold and bronze and silver. So first of all, we want to reduce our data set to only athletes that actually were able to win a medal. So let's do that. As I said, we first need to do a filtering operation. So let's type filter in the node repository, and we want to filter out some rows. So this is what I'm looking for, a node called row filter. Before configuring it, I need to input the data. So let's connect the nodes. Okay. And now I click on the gear to start the configuration. So these are all the options that I will need to look at to configure my node. And let's add the filtering criterion. Basically, we are telling the node what to keep and what not to keep. So we said the filter column, the thing we care about are the medals. So here is our column. And we could use the operator does not equal NA. And let's see if it's correct. So we execute the node. And the cool thing about KNIME is that you can see what's going on with your data right away. So now let's go to the medal column. And as you can see, the operation was right. The data set was reduced to only athletes that actually won a medal. So now that we reduced our data set, we need to start counting how many medalists are there for each and every Olympic team or country. So we need to do an operation in data science called aggregation. And to do so, I will show you something pretty cool. So I showed you before you can drag and drop nodes from the node repository. What you can also do is just extend this, and you get here some recommendations of frequently used nodes. So I said that we need an aggregator, and this is the node we're looking for. And what this node does is going through the data set and counting how many times each country appears, and that corresponds to the number of medalists because we already reduced the data set down to that. So let's go ahead and again, click on the gear button and configure our node. So this time, the column we are interested in counting is the team column. And we are counting the occurrence count, aka the number of rows. This we don't need to touch anything, and let's see if our calculations are correct. We go ahead and execute the node, and we get a list of countries and teams with the number of medalists associated to that. So since I think we both have the same accent here, let's first have a look at how many medalists Italy had throughout the history of the Olympics. So let's do another filter node. And this time I'm gonna ask to just keep the Italian team. So I will put team equals, and then I'll type in Italy. Okay. Let's see. Let's execute. Okay. This is a good number, but now I'm curious to see whether Italy isn't or is in the top 10. So we need to reduce our data set to the top 10 countries by number of medalists. To do so, we use a node that is called top K row filter. Here it is. Let's go ahead and configure this node. Again, I press on the gear. And first of all, I need to tell the number of rows I want to keep. I said the top 10 could be the top 20, but let's just do the top 10 here. And I want it sorted by occurrence count, aka number of medalists, in descending order, because I want the first data point of my table to be the highest number of medalists. And for a better visualization, we will take this option to also sort our output. Let's click OK, go ahead and execute the node. And as you see, we get the top 10, and Italy is in 6th place. So
Not bad.
not too bad. But why don't we visualize the node? As I said, KNIME offers a lot of visualization options, and we could do a simple bar chart. Here it is. As you see, it suggests me already this node. And let's look at the configuration, even though I think there's not, yeah, it looks correct because we care about the category team and occurrence count. That's what we are counting. Again, the number of medalists. These are for beautification. We're not really interested in that right now. And yes, we executed the workflow, and Italy is in green. Here it is. Okay. So what happens many times in any data project is that you get new data and you want to reuse previous pipelines. And the data that we used in this case are for all Olympic Games from the beginning to 2016. And we have here the same data with the same column for the 2020 edition. And I will show you something very cool, actually. So I have my other set of data here, and I can just drag and drop it into KNIME Analytics Platform. And this will automatically insert a CSV reader. So let's execute the CSV reader and have a look at the data. And as you see, it has the same shape of the data before. The only thing is that year is only 2020. So this is right. This is what we want. To unite the two tables, we are going to use a node. Let's take it from the node repository that is called concatenate. And as you see here, the node has two input ports because it requires two sets of data to be inputs. So we connect. Let's execute the node. Let's make sure that the operation went well. So I see here, let's see. Okay, so we have 2020 and we also have, yes, the rest of the editions. So now, as I said, it happens many times in data projects. For example, if you are a store and you want to analyze your sales data every month, that you want to do the same analysis on the data. And you can do so very easily in KNIME by just connecting here. So we are doing the same operation on the data. We can just execute it, and now we get the updated visualization. Okay.
Nice. But I have a question for you,
okay.
Actually.
Let's see.
Because we read some data, there is actually a CSV files saved, in this case, on my laptop. While I execute all these operations in a KNIME workflow, does the underlying data, so do those CSV files get changed or not?
Okay, that's a good point. So KNIME actually creates a copy of your data, so it does not touch your original CSV file, the athletes file. But what you can do, of course, is to save somewhere in your local machine, for example, the analysis of your data. So let's just do that. Those nodes in KNIME are called writers. And let's say, for example, I want to save it in an Excel. Here it is, Excel writer, it's already there. And the configuration here pretty much looks like the import data. So we are going to save it in our local machine. I will save it here in document. We can call this whatever, test. Okay, everything looks all right. Let's apply and press OK. And so right now, the file will be inserted in our local machine. So, Emilio, why don't you show us how we can share these solutions with the KNIME community?
Yes. Yes, so because I guess what you mean is that I have done something on my laptop now, so this workflow lives here. I can execute it, I can change the data, but what if I want to send this workflow to somebody or share it maybe with the community? So before we get there, actually, there is one important thing to remember is that you should it's highly recommended that you document your workflow before sharing, because otherwise it is visual programming, so it's still easy to kind of understand what is going on. But for better collaboration, so to ease basically the understanding of this workflow, we have a couple of tools that you can use to document it properly. First of all, you can add some comments under every node. if you click the node and then double click add comment, you can write something, little sentence that say, for example, here we filter the top 10 countries. Then you click this, and then you have a little bit of a documentation under every node. You can do it. The other tool, also very nice, is the tool of the annotations. If you right-click and then select New Workflow Annotation, then this window appears, and here you can write whatever you want. For example, workflow to filter, workflow to, I don't know, count the number of medalists in the Olympics. Something like that. You can change it, maybe make it a bit bigger in the center, and then change the color. And then you can move this kind of annotations around, so it looks prettier and easier to understand if I'm looking at this workflow for the first time. Now, what Michele was mentioning about sharing this workflow maybe with other people, with a broader audience, he was referring to the KNIME Community Hub. The KNIME Community Hub is this kind of platform that we have on the web. If you go at hub.knime.com, you will end up in the KNIME Community Hub homepage, where, among other things, you can search for solutions, search for workflows that other people in the community have shared, or even share your own solution. As soon as you register to hub.knime.com, you get a KNIME account, and then you also get some space to upload your own solution, either privately or shared with the whole community. For example, the cool thing is that I can search for something, for example, let's say KPI, that was already there, and let's say that I'm working, my boss tells me, okay, I need this workflow about KPIs, I don't know where to start. It's always nice to kind of browse among the workflows that are shared with me. And for example, I can see that there is this employee turnover KPI monthly workflow shared by KNIME in this case. When I open it, I can see a preview of my workflow here in the browser. And then the very cool stuff is that I can also select this icon and drop it into my KNIME Analytics platform. This will open it as a new tab, as a new, let's say, as a new local workflow. This is just a version message, but it's not important. And I can already see my workflow here inside KNIME Analytics platform. Again, it's a workflow that somebody else from the community shared. So I can have a look, I can execute it, and maybe I can start working on that, changing something. So I have kind of a starting point where to start developing my own solution. So KNIME Community Hub is a very, very nice tool. Keep it in mind, have a look at it, because there are many, many examples there. They're ready for you. And the other thing, or the last thing that I want to mention, is that recently we added some execution capabilities on KNIME Community Hub. So you can not just upload your stuff, but also use the execution of KNIME Community Hub. So execute it kind of on the cloud, and also collaborate with other people. But those functions are available only with the subscription of the team plan. So with that said, I think we can get back Rosaria on stage to ask if there are some questions.
Yes.
And I have a few questions.
Oh, of course.
Okay. Okay, so the first question is for Michele. You talked about the KNIME AI assistant. Can you show how it works?
Yes, sure. We can write a prompt together. So as you see here, KNIME works like any other chat assistant that you may be familiar with, and it is specifically trained on KNIME documentation. So let's, for example, ask KNIME. Let's go back to this workflow. Okay, so let's ask, for example, how do we filter columns in KNIME Analytics Platform? How do I filter columns in KNIME? Let's see what is the output of Kai, if it is any helpful. Yes, so it gives us some information about filtering columns in KNIME, and the cool thing that it already gives us a list of nodes, and we can just select it, and drag and drop it into the workflow. And this is the first feature that KNIME has. The second one, also very cool, is the build one. So we can instruct KNIME to build for us the workflows using natural language. So KNIME can read the data of wherever we position this. So for example, right now, it is looking at this data from the row filter with this table, okay? And let's ask it to build the same pipeline that we built and see how that goes. So we're gonna ask him, count the number of medalists for each team country in this dataset, and select the top 10 by number of medalists. I'm sure there is a better way to write this prompt without typos also, but let's see. Oh, okay. We get this output. Let's execute it, and we get the same solution. So as you see, KNIME uses different nodes, but the solution we get is the same. And actually, I would like to show you something else that I found very cool. That right now, of course, we used English, but KNIME also works with other languages. So let's go back, select the row filter, so it has the data to work with, and ask the same question in Italian, for example. Quindi conta il numero di medagliati per team e seleziona i primi 10 team. Let's see how KNIME, let's see if it speaks Italian. So it is analyzing it. Now we could get that a little bit, okay? And we get the same solution once again. So yes, this was KNIME.
Nice, thank you. So another question related still to the AI assistant, maybe so for Emilio. Does the AI assistant run fully on my laptop, or does it connect to external servers?
Yeah, very nice question. It doesn't fully run on your laptop, but it goes through basically our servers, and it uses a LLM, of course, underneath. So it's not fully local at the moment. Yeah. Also, that's also because we kind of improve it from time to time, so we don't ship it with KNIME Analytics Platform, but you need to connect basically to us. And in fact, we didn't show it, but to use it, you need to be logged in with a KNIME account. Exactly.
Yeah. So another question: if I make change on the input file.csv, the one that you use, does KNIME update it automatically? Does it refresh? How can I get the new results if I change the CSV file?
Okay, I can also. Oh,
yes,
please. I can also take that. So if the file doesn't change, then you can continue. Ideally, using if the file, basically the structure of the file and the name of the file doesn't change, then you can continue using the CSV reader. But if you want to change, let's say, just the name of the file, then the path to that file breaks, and then you need to update the node, of course.
I think he meant the content.
The content of the file, then basically it gets updated automatically, I guess.
You have to re-execute it.
Yes, you have to re-execute it. Of course, that's a good point. Yes. So basically, the next time that you reset and execute it again, then the file will be read with the new content, and then you can continue executing the rest normally as before. Yeah, I missed that.
Another question here. It says Emilio, but feel free to jump in. Can I schedule a workflow to run automatically?
This comes up
often.
very often. So on your local machine, on your local KNIME Analytics platform, the answer is no. The official answer is no. But if you want to, for example, if you want to automate the execution of some workflows, then the way to go is to use KNIME Hub, in this case, KNIME Community Hub. So that was the thing that I was mentioning before, maybe I can show you here that when you have one workflow opened on KNIME Hub, you have this little play button here that now is not activate, but there is the possibility to subscribe a team plan, and then with the team plan you can upload the workflow, collaborate with your team, and automate the execution of the workflow to run, for example, on a specific schedule. So the execution of that workflow will not happen on your machine; it will happen on KNIME Hub, but you have the whole menu to schedule the execution, for example, every morning, every 2 hours, every minute, whenever you prefer. But remember that you need a paid subscription for that.
Okay, so another question for Michele. What kind of output types do we have? For example, Tableau.
Yes, we have, I think this is an extension though, right?
Yes,
To
Tableau.
connect to Tableau, but we...
If you go here,
Yes.
we can show it there, and then the right. Those are some.
Yes, those are just some of them, but we can indeed connect with Tableau, right?
Yes, Tableau, Power BI. There are many other. What you don't see here are part of extensions. So the way to go and look for them is actually, again, KNIME Community Hub. For example, if I'm looking for a node and doesn't appear in my AP, I can go to KNIME Hub and search for Tableau. I'm saying Tableau just because it's the one that was part of the question, and then move to nodes. And here I can see that I have, for example, send to Tableau server or Tableau writer, something like that. Again, as before, I can drag and drop this node to my KNIME. Now it's becoming very messy, this workflow.
Yes.
And then the node will appear. Now, in this case, I already have the extension, actually. But for you, it will pop up, hey, this node is not available. You need an extension. You can just click next, and then the extension gets installed, and you get the node. Yeah.
There is a similar question to this one, since you're there. It asks, is there a guide for the different nodes available and about what they do, or one has to click and create the node and then check the info? So where can they find the information about the node without creating it?
Okay, I
think
think the best,
what you showed.
There on the hub, or actually if you click here, if you're looking for a node, you don't need to add it. You just click here, and then you get the documentation right away. Or just because we want to give you all the options, you can ask Kai, and most of the times you get the right answer.
All right.
Especially for common nodes.
Yeah, for
commonly
common
used
nodes.
nodes.
So another question, how does it work in a team environment?
Okay, so how to collaborate, I guess.
So.
This is a little bit on the...
Does it work is a bit big, but yeah.
On the collaboration side.
I think collaboration and execution both.
Yeah,
I think. Yeah.
true. I think this links to what we were mentioning before about the community hub, because what you're doing here, what you can do to collaborate in KNIME Analytics Platform is to kind of export your workflow, for example, and send it via email or via other means to your colleagues, and then they can import it, edit it, and send it back. Or you can do it on KNIME Community Hub, which is way simpler, let's say. So you just upload the workflow on KNIME Community Hub, and then more people have access to it, can collaborate, can version actually the workflow, so you can keep track of all the edits. The thing to remember is that for KNIME Community Hub, when you upload, you can either upload it on your private space or on your public space. If you want to have a private space, but that is shared with other people of your team, then you need a team subscription.
Yeah.
Yes, but KNIME Community Hub is the short answer.
So I have another question which might be related to the Community Hub subscription. So are the intermediate results of each node stored in several versions, or they are directly overridden when rerunning the workflow? So can I keep the history of the execution of the workflow?
Okay. I think there are different ways of reading this question. For keeping the history of the execution, so what you meant, if you do the execution on the hub, yes, then you have all the jobs. We don't want to go that much into details there, but yes, all the executions are kind of stored.
Every execution creates a job, and then you keep the history.
Then you keep the history, which is very, very helpful if you have the job scheduled every day, and then you can check what went inside the workflow. What I also want to add there, because maybe you can read it in another way, like do those basically the output of every node somehow, so like the intermediate execution of every node gets stored, and this is cached in memory. So as soon as you reset, basically, if you mean like this table and this table and this table, those are part of the cache, so on memory, and as soon as you reset, that execution gets kind of, they're gone, unless you save it with a writer somewhere in a file.
Okay. So another interesting question. Can we build macros with the workflows? Maybe Michele, you can.
Can we build macros, Emilio?
Can we build macros?
Macros like in Excel, there are these functions.
Okay.
But in the end, the workflow becomes your whole process. Let's say,
but like
so
a
that
component.
you read, if you want to kind of build, let's say, a more complex function, which is not like one node, then I guess components are the way to go. So kind of you build your workflow that does something with 400, 500 nodes, whatever, and then you can wrap it up into a component, which maybe I can do to show you.
Then we clean up.
Yeah, then we also clean up.
Yes.
So let's say that I want to kind of wrap up this part of my workflow, and or let's say just maybe this part. I can select all my nodes, right click, and click Create Component. And what happens here is that all my nodes are disappeared somehow, and then I get only one element here, which is the component that I can execute, and then I get the output. If I go inside the component, right-click Component, open component, then what I get is actually what was there, what is selected. So just the nodes that I've selected. But this is super helpful if you're kind of building those components for more complex stuff that you want to reuse somewhere else. So sometimes you don't want to share the whole workflow with somebody, but let's say that you have specific set of operations that you want to repeat, and also your colleague is willing of doing the same thing. Then you wrap it up into a component, and then you can share it. If you right-click Component, Share, then you can also share just that specific part of your workflow. So that's kind of a way of building more complex functions that can be shipped around.
Can component have a view? Can they have some graphics?
Yes, that's another very interesting question. Let's do this with an example. So let's say that I have a bar chart, but I also have the same thing, but with a pie chart like this, and then I have multiple views. What I can do is to wrap them up into a component again. So I select them, right-click, create component, confirm. Again, I have my component here, which I can execute. And then you see that since there are views inside my component, I can actually show it later. So component, open component. There are two view nodes here. Then my component gets this little magnifier icon, which I can click, and I get all my views inside the same page. So that's pretty helpful, especially because then they share the selection. So if I select something here, the component below gets selected, and you can actually create very complex dashboard and reports. So this can become more and more. But I think
we will have a new KNIME101 webinar in April, I think, on how to build your component. Okay, so don't miss it.
Yes,
this was just a spoiler.
I didn't ask the question. Okay, so another question. This is for Emilio. Can you explain better the options in the read from setting of the CSV reader file? Like what are the relative to the local file system, the mount point, this kind of stuff?
This is something that if you are opening a CSV reader for the first time, what I was mentioning, it's a bit overwhelming because you have a lot of options to select, especially to select where your file lives, so how to get the path to that file. You have many options. What we used here was the local file system. with which we just select the absolute path to that file. So this is my laptop, and the absolute path to that file looks like this. But there are other options, which mainly consist in selecting a different starting point. So instead of starting from the root of my file system, I can start, for example, from the mount point, and then select a file starting from my local mount point. Or even better, I can add a file path starting relatively to my current workflow. So I use my current workflow as a starting point, and then from there I navigate to the file. So I just use a different starting point instead of the root. The other thing to mention here is this current workflow data area, which is very, very important if you are moving your workflow and you want to be sure that it executes somewhere else. Because if I try to execute this workflow somewhere else and I don't have the data, or the node doesn't know how to reach the data because the path, it doesn't work on that laptop, then it's going to fail. If you save the data in your current workflow data area, which is just a folder inside your workflow, then you are sure that the workflow gets shipped together with the data, and then will always execute no matter where, basically. So yeah, those are all the options in a nutshell.
Perfect. Another question. Can I do a prediction analysis with machine learning and then obtain the results with statistics on different models?
Whoa.
That's
yeah,
a
this is already
pet question.
Yeah.
It's a lot of stuff in one question.
Yeah. Jumping from CSV reader to machine learning, yeah,
yes.
It's already a big jump.
You can show the machine learning nodes.
We can show, yes.
Yeah.
So the answer is yes, of course. And if you go to analytics, I think, and then mining, you have a bunch of nodes to do machine learning. They are learners and predictors. So one is to kind of train your model, and the other one is to apply the model. Let's say you have decision trees, like from the most simple ones to more complex ones, like from logistic regressions to decision tree to like regression trees, etc. Actually, we can also do deep learning, and so to actually train your model there, or of course use some of the LLMs models that are trendy now. But in that case, you probably won't train them. And the question was if we can train them and then apply multiple of them, combine them. Yes, you can. You're free of learning different models and then combine the results and
do the statistics on the output. Sure.
And take the best one.
Okay, so we have time for one more question because we are reaching almost the end of the hour. So this is for Michele. If I want to learn more about KNIME Analytics Platform, what other resources are available?
Okay, that's a good question, especially after this webinar, if you're interested in learning more about KNIME.
I think we have a slide, no?
Yes, we had. Okay,
yeah,
perfect. So KNIME actually offers 4 learning paths of courses that are structured in this way. So they have different focuses, focused on data analysis, data engineering, data science, or if you're interested in teaching KNIME and become a KNIME trainer, there is also a dedicated path to that. These courses are offered either self-paced, so they are completely free and you can follow them online at your own pace, or they can also be instructor-led. And you can find all of this information at knime.com/learning. After each block, so every course has 4 different blocks building on your proficiency in KNIME. After each block, you can get a certification that you can then share. And another cool resource that KNIME has are the resources of the KNIME Press. So those are booklets or just books if you're more of a traditional learners and you like to have a structured book in front of you to learn. There's many different books that you can see at knime.com/KNIMEpress, and you can download them for free as a PDF. And actually, since we mentioned the courses, the next session of instructor-led courses will be at the KNIME Spring Summit in Berlin from March 18th to March 20th. So if you are around Berlin, we will see each other in Berlin.
Thank you. So we finish here our webinar. I would like to thank you for staying with us until the end. I would like to thank the speaker, Emilio and Michele, for the great presentation. And I would like to share with you about the next episode, the next KNIME 101 webinar episode. It's going to be 10 tips and tricks when using KNIME by Philip Kowalski. So you can register now for the next episode of the KNIME 101. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And see you at the next one.
Bye-bye.